What's going on, guys? So we are out here at the Vanleigh Beacon from Tiffin. This is a beautiful full body paint fifth wheel. Got a lot of videos on this thing so far. A lot of people don't realize just how much work it takes to get everything up and running whenever you get a new fifth wheel, getting all your stuff moved to it, getting it all cleaned up, things positioned where you want it, putting your plates on. All sorts of little things have to happen. So I'm out here, this is one of those days. But in this specific video, I wanted to talk about axles, because what I noticed in the previous 3 videos I think I've done, a lot of people say, wow, this thing is simply enormous. Why is it riding on 2 axles and not 3? So we're gonna talk about that. Hang tight, I'll be right back. All right, guys, so we are back here at the axles. These are twin 8,000-pound axles, has 17.5-inch wheels and tires. These are 215/75 R16 Westlake H-rated tires. You heard that right. I always talk about how good the G-rated tires are. Well, these are actually a load range higher than those. These are very, very heavy-duty tires. Total axle capacity on this unit is 16,000 pounds. Let's quickly jump over to the sticker so we can see what the sticker looks like. Pardon if you hear the generator running. It's actually not that loud. 3,100 pound cargo capacity, and it has an 18,500 pound gross vehicle weight rating. And a lot of people are gonna say, well, shoot, this thing has a total weight of 18,500 pounds when fully loaded. You have twin 16,000 pound axles on here. Where's the 2,500 pounds going then, right? Do you have 2,500 pounds over the axle rating on these axles? And you don't. And I think that's the part a lot of people get confused by. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. So the first thing we need to focus in on is the front axle of this fifth wheel. And I'm not talking about the front axle back here. I'm talking about the front axle right here, which is actually the back axle of the pickup truck. So just like a pickup truck, all your weight isn't resting on just the rear axles, right? In the case of my truck, the majority of the weight is actually resting on the front axle because that's where the engine is and everything else whenever the truck is not loaded up with a fifth wheel or a ton of heavy cargo in the back. So whenever you spread that weight out across both axles, you'll realize that they share the load. Well, in a fifth wheel, these axles back here, both of them would really only be considered your rear axles. Your front axle is going to be the back axle of the pickup truck. So not all of your weight is resting over just the axles on the trailer. A good percentage of it is actually resting on the back of your truck. In the case of this trailer, about 3,500 plus pounds is actually going to be transferred to the back of my truck. So let's say I load this thing up to its total gross vehicle weight rating. Again, 18,500 pounds. If I deduct the 3,000-ish pounds worth of cargo capacity off of that, that leaves this with a dry weight of 15,500 pounds. So right there, the dry weight of this trailer can entirely be supported by those 2 axles. But that's not how it works, right? Because roughly 20% of that weight is going to be transferred to the back of my truck. So the manufacturer says that this has a 3,500 pound base pin weight that transfers to the back of my truck. So if I deduct 3,500 pounds from the dry weight, that means when this thing is dry, not loaded up with stuff, I'm only transferring 12,000 pounds to the back axles. 12,000 pounds to 16,000 pound rated axles. Now let's say I load this thing up with 2,000 pounds worth of cargo. Some of that weight will actually transfer to the truck itself. So the reality is, on 16,000 pound axles with an 18,500 pound gross vehicle weight rating, I should really not ever have more than about 15,000 pounds at maximum load transferred to the back of this trailer or to the 2 axles that are on this trailer. If I'm practically loading it, and I'm not loading it to max capacity with full tanks and all that, the reality is it's going to be closer to about 14,000 to 14,500 pounds that actually rest on those twin axles. But that's not the only reason to go with 2 axles over 3. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Right, so I know a lot of you guys see these massive toy haulers going down the road and you see the 3 axles on them and you think that's a smart idea, right? They usually put 3 7,000 pound axles, gives you 21,000 pounds worth of gross axle capacity. Now, when you see 2 axles, you're like, man, you're putting a lot of weight on those 2 axles. That's not always the case. A lot of people think it's always a positive thing to have a 3rd axle back here. A lot of the reasons why you see that on a toy hauler, it's simply because it's a toy hauler, because the weight that's loaded in the back of a toy hauler is pretty significant if you're taking a razor with you, if you're taking heavy toys with you, and you're trying to transfer that weight from the back all the way to the front over the 3 axles. The downside of having 3 axles is one of your axles is generally dragging, which means your rear axle is usually the one that when you're taking a sharp turn, your tires are actually dragging around that turn. And a lot of people with tri-axle toy haulers absolutely hate the wear and tear they get on their 3rd axle, and the fact that it can actually wear away the bearings quicker. It can cause other issues that you have to keep an eye on. Having 2 axles from a practicality perspective and even from a maintenance perspective is the preferred way to go for a lot of people. But again, realize that if I have a toy hauler that needs to be able to carry 20,000 pounds or 21 or 22,000 pounds, I might have to go with 3 axles simply because an 8,000 pound axle plus an 8,000 pound axle is giving me 16,000 pound gross axle weight rating. A 3rd axle, of course, would give me significantly more, whether they're 7,000 pound axles or 8,000 pound axles. And understanding that oftentimes to get the weight rating you need for the trailer, you might have to have a 3rd axle. In the case of this unit, absolutely not needed. It really wouldn't make sense to put a 3rd axle on this unit, given the fact that they're running 2 8,000 pound axles, H-rated tires, very high quality tire, very high quality axle, just a very good setup for this size of 5th wheel. If this was a 20,000 pound 5th wheel, I would take that statement back and I would say it needs a 3rd axle just to be able to support the weight. But this is more than enough for the size of trailer that this is. So yeah, anytime I do a video on a large 5th wheel or toy hauler and it only has 2 axles, I get a lot of people mentioning why doesn't it have a 3rd axle. I hope this clarifies it, but even if it does, you know, a lot of people may not ever watch this video, so every time I do another video on this topic, people are gonna say, you know, why doesn't it have 3 axles? But if you reference them to this video, I think it'll all make sense. Anyways, guys, I sure hope this makes sense. If it does, please leave a comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts. If you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.